Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us here for the Blockchain Beyond Crypto, Non-Financial Uses of Blockchain for a More Transparent World panel. I'm delighted to join you here from a sunny but cold Finland, where it is -30 here in Imatra in eastern Finland. My name is Nishan Chalvachandran. I'm the Global Policy Director and Advocacy Director for Women in Tech Global. As you know, or as you know from the current pandemic and the current situation, we are all, well, quite rightly so, we're all global. We are not all in Sharjah, and we're joining online, and this is a pre-recorded session. But I'm pleased to and excited to actually have this opportunity to speak to my fellow panelists, who are all experts and trailblazers in their field, with blockchain being the common thread. However, their areas of expertise and their products and solutions and whatnot are quite diverse. So it'll be really interesting to get some of their insights and really see what their view is and what perspective is on the areas of blockchain, or the emerging areas of blockchain, and where this is actually integrating into the wider space for transparency. So if we can I'll introduce the panel to you now. So of course we have Madison Campbell, the CEO and co-founder of Telehealth, who is based in, or she is actually currently in California in the US. We have her co-founder and CTO, Liesel, also from Telehealth, of course. She is based in New York, in the US. We have Sandy Becky, founder of HeHop. She's based in Paris. And of course, Shirley, who is the COO of Borderless Network, and she is actually based in Switzerland. So hello, everyone. Before we get started, what I will do actually is, virtually pass the mic on to all of you individually, and perhaps you can just give a couple of minutes, a short intro into your background, what it is you do, and then we can get stuck in, as it were. So I'll through no order of preference, I'll purely go through how I'm seeing you on my screen. So if we start if I pass the mic on to you, Sandy.
Thank you, Nishan. Hello, everybody. So thank you for having me on this panel and having the opportunity of speaking about blockchain today. So I'm the founder of a not-for-profit organization called HeHop, Help for Hope, providing a blockchain integrated solution for the fight against violence behind closed doors. And before that, I come from the corporate world, having worked more than 15 years in a high-tech company, which I guess I got that inclination of bringing technology for the good of society.
Thank you, Sandy. And I'll now hand the mic over to Shirley.
Hello, my name is Shirley Valge, and I'm the CEO of Velas, based in our headquarters in Crypto Valley Zug in Switzerland. And Velas is the world's first artificial intelligence-empowered delegated proof-of-stake blockchain ecosystem. And also we have decentralized products built on top of it. And I've been professionally in the industry in Switzerland since early 2018. And I started studying the technology and Bitcoin already in 2016, doing my first investments back in early 2017. Before Velas, almost 2 years ago, I worked for the largest Swiss crypto mining investment firm in Switzerland as a chief sales officer.
Well, thank you, Shirley. And I apologize in advance for mispronouncing any names. Being British, it's hard for me to roll my R's, so I can't say Shirley as assertively and passionately as you do. So my apologies moving forward if I do mispronounce any names. But moving on. So if I pass the mic on to you, Madison.
Hey. Hi, guys. I'm Madison Campbell. I'm the CEO of Telehealth. I'm currently experiencing an allergy attack at approximately 6:20 a.m. in the morning. I'm in Los Angeles, or Palm Springs, actually, area. I created this company, that I believe will kind of do all the awesome tech stuff, because it is really awesome. But, the genesis of this company came from my experience as a sexual assault survivor. So wanting to really create resources around that. and try to fight gender-based violence as well, like Sandy was saying, but just in innovative, interesting ways. I think my fascination with blockchain started a long ago. I wish I would have got in a lot lower than I did, but my portfolio is looking pretty good now. But yeah, I think fascination as a young kid on Reddit and looking at how blockchain was growing, and it's kind of really awesome that we now have it as a core piece of our technology. So Liesel, go for it.
I'll just go for it instead of having Nishan introduce me, but thank you for having me. My name is Liesel. I am the CTO of Telehealth. My background is in software engineering, and when I met Madison, basically we started looking into, if you're a survivor of sexual assault, what options do you have? Found out that the processes that currently exist is paper to pen, basically. And, with my background, I looked at everything from a technology point of view, and really saw the value of redesigning the entire process using design and technology and making, a new process that's better, faster, and more efficient for lots and lots of people. And I come from the other side of the world. I was born and raised in Nepal. So growing up in Nepal and having worked in shelters that rescue trafficked women, I firsthand saw the resources available there. And, then coming to the US for college and, see the innovative solutions for almost every single other area of our lives. It was just, why haven't we done anything in this space, right? Why is it still so antiquated? And really just wanting to leverage all these technologies that are just at our disposal right now to make our lives better.
Thank you, Liesel, and thank you, everyone. It's quite apparent to me, of course, that we do have a common thread here within the panel. Of course, as you've just heard, we have some interesting streams looking at violence and sexual violence and offences, and I guess the criminal justice system, which then interplays into some, I guess, governance and systems level innovations or revolutions, let's say. But thinking on blockchain more generally, of course, as Shirley mentioned in her intro, that blockchain traditionally, has been utilized and formed on cryptocurrency, and we all know that it is a decentralized cryptographic ledger that enables data and transactions to be securely and immutably tracked within the network. But moving, if we were to just move away from the synonymous cryptocurrency, which blockchain is known for, and start thinking where else is blockchain being used for, or perhaps more importantly, where is there scope for blockchain to make a difference, or where could it make a difference? Perhaps I could ask that question to you first, Shirley, just from your vantage point, I guess from a governance or a systems level view, how does blockchain, or how could blockchain change how we how we operate as a society?
Yeah, so coming originally from Estonia, which has the most advanced digital government in the whole world, I can definitely name endless use cases how governments can deploy blockchain for public services. As currently we have 99% of public services 24/7 accessible via a portal called Estonia, and it's all built on distributed ledger technology called KSI blockchain. It is developed by CardTime, which originates from Estonia and is now building state defense and enterprise level blockchain solutions all over the world. And what people can do on the blockchain, they can vote, they can file taxes with about 5 or 6 clicks within 2 to 3 minutes. They can access their health records from anywhere in the world. And it's actually 20 years ago when this whole e-government was implemented. And actually already from my base school, we had an online school. So it was very hard to cheat. When a teacher had some critics to you, then it was immediately inserted in the system and your parents could take it from the other. And these were the first use cases. And And voting started from 2005 when we had the first online elections, and the last parliamentary elections in 2019, 46% of the whole population voted online. And if someone is interested how it looks like, I also have some amateur video on YouTube where I showed how the whole process looks like on the government platform. And what is amazing that it's every time the government accesses your data, then you immediately see it in the browser. So it is extremely transparent, and it creates a privacy-respecting, transparent society, and additionally saves dramatically on administrative costs. So these are examples which I grew up with, and now living abroad, living in Switzerland, earlier 10 years ago, I also lived in Italy, seeing how the administrative processes run there, and the bureaucracy, it's just so much paperwork. In Estonia, I don't remember, 20 years ago, maybe I received my last paper mail. And now in Switzerland, it's like normal to send everything still on a paper. And it's extremely cumbersome for a process which could be actually done everything on blockchain. So
I highly don't recommend going to the United States then. Very bad.
that was actually going to be the touch point for my next thought or my next question. I guess being in Finland right now, of course, and being a relatively close neighbor to Estonia, I think Finland also likes to see itself as being a digital governance, systems or society, perhaps not as advanced in Estonia, as you said, 20 years ago with the first deployments, and everything is really integrated, providing that level of trustworthiness, transparency, from systems level down, but also grassroots level, and the communities being able to trust their government and whatnot. Perhaps Finland can learn a few things from Estonia. I'll be in trouble from Finland by saying that, but
actually all the countries in the world can learn from Estonia, because it's just a server space which they need. The model is all the same, and so every citizen has an ID card, and they have a public identification number, and rest of the data and all the entries are private, and basically, there are just 3 services which cannot be done online 24/7 from anywhere in the world, and it is getting married, divorce, and buying or selling real estate. These are the only services. But the real estate will change soon.
Yeah, and I think I can understand why perhaps marital status still requires a level of physicality.
Yeah.
But thinking, I guess, of course, having 2 of our panelists here from the US, I think it'll be interesting after hearing, I guess, the more digitally advanced governance system from Estonia. How does that compare to the US, Madison and Liesel? I'll open up.
Estonia, what are you guys talking about? Like, we're so much more advanced in Estonia. Like, we're not doing ID checks at all at voting booths. Nothing like that, happening. We're just like 70 years backwards. Like, the main thing that we're trying to innovate on is, our unlike Sandy kind of doing kind of the reporting stuff, we do a biological evidence collection, right? So we're trying to take this kit, which is, in America and mostly abroad called a sexual assault evidence collection kit, and be able to give that to the consumer, and then be able to track, everything that the consumer is doing through the application, right? Using blockchain, creating those immutable records, with each sample that you're collecting. Like, that whole notion of doing something like that, which is technology and consumer friendly and survivor centric and brought to your home and feeling comfortable, which it sounds like that's kind of what Estonia is doing, right? Like, these complex things that are uncomfortable for you to do are being brought into your home, are being brought into an area that's super easy and understand. Where in America, you had to push technology, on the criminal justice system, voting system, right? I know plenty of people that are, in civic engaged, startups and things like that. And just, it's massive, because of the political divide between Republicans and Democrats. It's a massive divide in not wanting technology to kind of step in and interfere. And that's kind of, what a lot of the genesis of pushback that both we get voting basket or just any technology kind of that is really, really amazing, could change the world, gets is this pushback on like, oh, no, we've been doing things and they've kind of been working, and like, that's probably okay. Like, let's just continue this, like, very high level of things kind of working. I mean, Liesel, going through your immigration process right now, like, how's that, for you? Probably horrible, right?
Yeah, it only requires like 10,000 papers stacked to be submitted, right? And everything is actual papers. Everything needs to be actually hand signed. So that's how it's going. And that's kind of what we're trying to change in terms of what we're doing with our company and our product as well, where, you start thinking about how the process has existed in the past like decades, and that's been paper to pen, like lots and lots of paperwork, and they're being stored at the back of like police evidence shelves to the 1980s. So like, you start thinking about more than one single case, like when you start thinking of hundreds of cases, how do you really track that, right? And how do you even process that? That like is really, really outdated. And even in terms of like accessibility, to increase accessibility to a large number of folks, like people in general, we need to ensure that now there is a digital way to, access the service, and especially during, a global pandemic. Like, if you can't get to a hospital, if you physically can't get out of your house, how do you still access those resources without physically having to move from where you are, right? And I feel like blockchain and technology in general, using, your mobile, every single person has a mobile phone, at least, here they do, how to utilize what we have to get to where we need to be, right?
And I think also it's like, one of the things that we're seeing is like electronic medical records was like not even a thing up until like a few years ago. Like, it was just like, pen and paper and folders in like, like a very podunk office, right? That was like how our medical system worked. We're only just getting up to like making the medical system semi-digital, but like, we still have a large group of people that are adamantly against telehealth, like adamantly, no, telehealth, stealing our jobs, not going to get paid as much by insurance, like all this kind of stuff. Like, the incentives are not aligned for technology to prosper, kind of because of our system. So you see the younger generation like us kind of like pushing technology, realizing we have to kind of be the generation of change and the voice, behind technology actually being an integral part of life. But the biggest problem is you just have a lot of like, folks, kind of in their like late 50s, or, early 60s, or even 70s and 80s, still trying to make a lot of, things stay static, right? They don't want to create change.
That's a really, really good point. I think it's quite clear as well that technology, of course, is a force for change and innovation, but also when we're talking about these things, it's really dependent on the conditions of the environment. So, of course, when we're looking at European governments or systems, perhaps as you mentioned, Estonia or Finland, where the infrastructure is receptive to this type of adoption of technology to augment the process, to actually power and progress things in a trustworthy and transparent way. And perhaps in the US, where some of the models are, I don't want to say antiquated, but we have the legacy models where perhaps technology is seen as more conflicting rather than augmentative. But I wanted to actually pick your brain a bit here, Sandy, because of course, from Help for Hope and from your perspective as an NGO, I guess I know, of course, you're focused in very much bringing hope and restoring faith in the judiciary system and for victims of violence. But as an NGO, of course, you're also, I won't say politically agnostic, but perhaps you have a different perspective on the challenges that systems or governments might face when it comes to the use of this kind of innovative technology to perhaps solve or progress change in something that, especially when we talk about violence, sexual violence, that is quite limbic and emotive, and it's quite a physical, emotive, area, I guess. So how, what is your take on it?
To build up on what Shirley, Madison, and Liesel mentioned about how technology and blockchain are used in their respective countries where we're based, I mean, we all know that in France, certainly, this country is maybe the number one for red tape in the world. Although a lot of things are changing, and the government is sort of transferring quite a lot of services to the digital world. But yet there's quite a lot to do, because we still have a lot of things that we have to do through paperwork and quite cumbersome paperwork. If we talk about the judiciary system and the criminal justice system, I think that we are becoming more and more receptive to what technology can bring into the, especially into domestic violence and every form of violence per se. For us, when we speak about the solution we bring, where we tell the justice, the judicial system, with a solution like HeHope, we can guarantee that any evidence that someone is bringing to the police station, and that will be added to a judicial file, and that will go to courthouse. We can tell you that thanks to a technology like blockchain, we can guarantee that it's tamper-free, that it's that nobody's been able to access it and modify it once it's been captured by the solution, and then sealed on the blockchain, and then secured on a digital safe. We thought that people would be suspicious, and actually that's a really strong point, because today in a country like France, and I think that's the same in a lot of countries, whenever someone press charges for domestic violence or violence behind closed doors, where you don't have any witnesses, here in France, 80% or even more than 80% of the complaints get dismissed because people are not able to provide any evidence. And when they're able to provide evidence, because they would use their smartphones, for example, so using a digital device, there's still some room for discussion and questioning about the validity, the legal validity of that evidence. Because technology being technology, it is also extremely sophisticated today. So basically you have out there on the internet, you've got lots of software and tools allowing you to modify any audio file or a video file or even a photo. So we more and more see that even if blockchain is quite new, I mean, it's not like in Estonia where everybody seems to know what blockchain is. Here, you still have to explain what it is. A lot of people can hear it or read it, but have no idea of what it's doing. So there's still a lot of education around it. But we see blockchain being used in the automotive industry, in the food industry. Now we are the first example of blockchain being used in the area of justice. So I think it's definitely the technology of the future, and it's going to be mainstream and integrated in our day-to-day life.
I have comments. So when Estonia, so to say, like advertised all these new ways of voting, accessing your healthcare files and so on, no one knew what is the underlying technology. We only know why it's better, why is it more faster, what are the benefits of using it this way rather than the old way. And the blockchain, like this technology only came now recently with the cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. But before that, we just knew that it's an easier solution. We took it granted. And this is, I think, how you actually achieve mass adoption with the technology as well. And this is what we do at Velas as well. We're trying to create, we're trying to mix like the best world, like from the centralized world and from decentralized, and create like a hybrid, so that we create a super accessible, user-friendly products, and the people wouldn't even know that they are built on a blockchain, on a decentralized blockchain, because right now the decentralized services and products are extremely difficult to use for normal, non-technical person.
You actually read my mind there, Shirley, because I was actually just about to ask about the barriers the barriers of adoption, because of course, as we've all quite rightly said, that the technology is proven to be safe and secure and be a safe platform for trust and transparency, but also in a specific applied context if we're looking at criminal justice system. So my background, I used to be a police officer and a digital forensics examiner. So knowing the importance of securing the evidence chain and also utilizing technology in order to do that, and ensuring the validity, credibility, and legitimacy of data capture and evidence capture, I think is critical. But one thing I think that is interesting, which is both the barrier for change, but also the barriers of technological adoption. You've kind of already answered that with what you were talking about with the ecosystem that you're building at Vela. But perhaps, Madison, I can then pivot that to you and ask you, with what you guys are doing at Leader Health and trying to really utilize this technology to revolutionize how sexual offenses are investigated and how evidence is captured in a way that essentially augments and supports the criminal justice system to be more effective. But what are the barriers? What are the barriers that you're facing directly, but so that you can see more widely in terms of the adoption of this type of technology at systems level?
So this goes back to, and every country kind of has this, right? This notion of admissibility and chain of custody, right? And the notion that judges, prosecutors, what have you, are not going to be able to determine the validity of this because it was done in a home or it was done in a different way than the traditional, the traditional way of going to hospital or going to the police and filing a report. So I like to think back to historically of say it's just DNA or any evidence, right? Text messages are routinely used in, self-collected video is routinely used in court. A multitude of different things are routinely used in court. And by the way, the first time they were ever used, it was fraught with controversy, right? The first time anyone, wiretapping is a good example. The first time they've ever used wiretapping, it was a huge, big controversial thing. Judges didn't want to do it. Prosecutors didn't want to do it. Why are we putting this into evidence? All this kind of stuff. And then, over time, as you set court precedent, it becomes something that's very normal. So I think with companies like Sandy's, companies like ours, it's more about just storming the gate and being technology is here. We're all going to use it. And judges, you're just going to have to get used to it, right? It's just like wiretapping. You're so confused about it. Now you're using it to prosecute people. You're using text messages, you're using videos, you're using anything. It's no different than any other piece of judgment. This whole notion that judges are never going to be able to get up to speed or prosecutors are never going to get up to speed is frankly laziness and something that, I don't really subscribe to. So, I think there's this notion of, like Shirley's saying, right? If it's so consumer friendly, everybody will want to use it. You won't be asking is this built on blockchain or not? It'll just be so consumer friendly that it's so much better than any other system that currently exists. And by creating a system that is so much better, so much more consumer friendly, you'll see use, just dramatically increase than what currently exists out there because it's so much easier. And you see a massive consumer use towards, governmental products, then, not only are you going to see innovation happen, but innovation will have to happen, right? Because so many people will be using this system and not the current system.
Absolutely. So I guess in that sense, it's very much, I guess, what is multi-pronged. Of course, there's the education factor of people understanding what it is and how the technology works. But at the same time, ultimately, from a consumer-driven point of view, if it works and it works better, then it doesn't matter how, as long as it is effective, as long as we get the results and we can ensure that there is this transparent and accountable process in the way and everyone is all the better for it, then that's the best way to actually expedite the process. I want to hand back to you, Sandy. Slightly with a slightly different, I guess, pivot now, but because of course, we're talking about the adoption of technology, and we're talking about changing, or implementing change within governance frameworks or the criminal justice system, or how evidence is collected and that kind of thing. And of course, a lot of this thinking was based on what I refer to as the before times, before COVID-19, before the pandemic. So now, as we've gone into the pandemic and the world as we know it has changed in terms of even just our social interactions. I'm sure, of course, if you have necessarily the data yet to say how that's affected in terms of domestic violence reporting or your core area of deployment with Help for Hope. But I was wondering, how do you think, or do you have any actual examples of how the pandemic has actually changed the way of working, or the change of adoption of these technologies? Has it actually sped up, and has this barrier of engagement been low because of the need, or has progress actually been stifled? Are we falling back to traditional ways of working which weren't as effective as they once were?
So I'm going to answer that question from the point of view of what's happening in France, because I'm not going to be really able to speak for other countries. But and if I talk about specifically violence behind closed doors, so the usage of technology has, of course, become more and more let's say something of the daily lives, because if we talk about violence, domestic violence, which was absolutely soaring during the pandemic, but that's been the case everywhere. The only way to sort of for people suffering from domestic violence to get in touch with women's aid organizations, or even some services of the police forces, or any kind of support that they would be able to get, was through the technology. So and people here it's the same as a lot of countries in the world. A lot of people have a smartphone, and all those applications where you could call someone for help, or an application like HeHope, which was actually released last year in June, just between two lockdown periods, actually. And of course, the usage of HeHope was really high, because it's a type of tool that people going through that kind of situation can use, because it's not that easy to go to the police station. It's not that easy to go to the offices of a women's aid organization and get the support, and everything is done online and remotely. Here in France, we got one example late last year of someone who's been going through domestic violence for many years, had seen the complaints being dismissed, and late last year that woman went to the police forces and pressed charges against an intimate partner. And thanks to an audio recording that was captured and collected with HeHope, the complaint got prosecuted, and so that's really showing how technology can really play a role, and especially in this period where the stay-at-home rule is something that is experienced globally.
Absolutely, and I think that has perhaps, of course, more holistically, when we're looking at technology, the pandemic has definitely, I think, accelerated a lot of the grassroots and community level usage of technology in some very interesting ways, and a lot of these efforts and deployments have actually showcases the value of technology and the importance of it. Shirley, of course, Velas has a wide range of products and solutions that utilize blockchain as the backbone. But I guess from your perspective, how has the pandemic affected operations or deployments? From where you sit, has it been a similar experience, or have there actually been some challenges?
Well, already before the pandemic, we worked with remote offices. We have offices all over the world, like Asia, US, Kiev, now even in Dubai. So nothing changed in this perspective. The actual processes became even more efficient, everybody were working only and sitting at home. So we became much more efficient as a team. Also, in the crypto space, it was generally a very successful year. A lot was done, and the only thing that changed was the business development, and like business meetings shifted all online rather than offline. We still managed to have a couple of meetups actually in Switzerland and in Dubai. So it actually didn't affect us negatively at all. We are already anyways digital. It's crypto space.
No, agreed. I think, as you quite rightly say, a lot of tech, I don't want to necessarily blank the whole of the tech industry, but of course, a lot of companies that are specialized in tech, because we're quite well versed or fluent in these methodologies, working remotely and having disparate teams that are, essentially borderless working is what I like to refer to it as.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, Madison and Liesel, of course, as co-founders, you guys are sitting on opposite ends of the country. Do you share, I guess, Sandy and Shirley's experience with that now that we're in for the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going back to a physical office anytime soon, at least for the remainder of the year. Like, most of our work, like 90% of our work, can be done online. And, if we need to be working with our physical product, I can go to UPS and ship it and have it delivered to Madison the next day. Like I delivered 1,000 kits to her house last week, right? So it's really not a big deal. And also in general, like everyone before me said, the pandemic really has enforced resources that were overdue a very long time ago. And people are actually, it's enforcing sort of a behavioral change in the society as large, in terms of accessibility, in terms of telehealth solutions, in terms of virtual accessibility and care, replacing the need for physical interaction. Obviously, physical interaction will still have a lot of value and will still take place in a world post-pandemic, but virtual care and everything is here to stay. And I think the government and these other bodies just have to get up to speed, because it's just going to make lives better for everyone. And even going back to what Sandy was saying, during COVID-19, when it was just starting out in a lot of states in the US, sexual assault survivors were being turned away from hospitals because they were considered non-essential patients. They did not have enough staff to take care of them in the ER. So in states such as California, they started making the use of at-home kits such as ours to actually give care to survivors who couldn't make it to hospital and were being turned away. So, it's the pandemic has really enforced this behavioral change at large in a society. So yeah, remote work we're all loving it, right, Madison?
I mean, you are flying out here next week, so.
Yeah, I am, because it's snowing outside. I don't know if you can see my background.
It is quite clear that we can still work effectively, and of course I think one in technology, and I guess in our streams, is that we're always a bit like the DevOps side, which is continually evolving, in that we're always shifting how we work and how we do things effectively. And perhaps one of the disparities or sort of conflict between technology and infrastructure is that infrastructure can sometimes take time to change and develop, and sometimes it takes a long time for infrastructure or legislative systems to keep up with the evolution of technology, right? So I think perhaps that might be where one of the challenges exists. But I wanted to, one thing is very clear, as I've mentioned a couple times in this panel, that all, the four of you share. I guess obviously not just the blockchain expertise and the technological expertise, but in terms of your areas of operations, of course, Lida focusing on the that's supported by the blockchain backend, but the physical evidence, and of course, Sandy, that's very similar with Hope in terms of the digital capture of the evidence in domestic violence, and of course, Shirley with Velas and again, the multiple different really interesting products and services that Velas is developing. But one thing I think I want to say it's the elephant in the room. So it's not for most people, but I make a point in saying this, in the fact that, and perhaps you don't necessarily need to answer this, but I'm going to put the question out there. In terms of being a woman in tech space, and all the guys being founders, C-level leaders in this space, pioneers in this space. Thinking back to pre-COVID, and then of course currently in the pandemic, how has the pandemic affected perhaps your experience within the tech space in terms of career progression, and thinking more at a higher level in terms of gender equity? How has there been a shift? Has the pandemic caused a shift in the progress of true gender equity within the tech space, or has there been a regression or a progression? I'm asking that open-ended question to all of you because, again, depending on where you sit, you might have a different perspective on this. So I'll open it up to the floor.
Well, I'll say it's a lot harder to get hit on as a woman when everything is virtual and everyone's hiding behind a computer, which I think is great. Because being a woman in tech, you are oftentimes like the only woman in a room full of engineers, who are mostly single and mostly don't respect boundaries. And so, +1 for gender equity. Let's not get hit on and sexually harassed all the time for being a woman in tech. So, I think that has been really good in terms of like forcing boundaries on things and like actually empowering women to speak up because they know their voice can somehow be heard and not actually be shot down. Liesel?
Yeah, I think I second that, but also I think after the pandemic, we've actually seen an increase in, the amount of people we talk to and have access to, because everyone, in the US, there was a BLM movement, so many things that was happening at large, that a lot of people in positions of power and just in general, they just are, getting more online, increasing their accessibility to people like us. And I think we've just had an increase in terms, actually getting a seat at the table because it's virtual and you don't have to travel physically, right?
I would say that more even on a general basis, even if we don't talk just about technology, I think that the pandemic has also shown the role of women in the economy at large, because there was really a realization that if we look at least here in France, that hospital staff, staff working in grocery stores, supermarkets, and all those areas that were like open and very vital to the economy during the pandemic, a lot of the jobs are occupied by women. And so that made it like really visible that are really a driving force of the economy. So that doesn't mean that that really changed anything very practically speaking on wages and getting to equal pay. Not yet. But I think that really raised the visibility of the role of women in the economy. Coming back to technology, I think that because this period we are in, we need to rely more and more on technology. I think it also raised the visibility of technology-oriented initiatives and what they can bring to society and how they can make the lives of people better. And so for initiatives which are led by women, it also allowed those initiatives to get more traction and a wider audience. I've never been invited to that many forums and events before the COVID to speak about HEOP and the technology of blockchain, for example.
Yeah, I can say a couple of words. I mean, although a lot didn't change, but I tried to make maximum out of the pandemic and lockdown in terms of self-development and like goals, what I want to achieve. And also like I see a lot of women are now really interested in the crypto because they're like reading maybe more about the technology news, and I'm trying to help them to get them onboarded to, I don't know, how to open a wallet or how to navigate through exchanges and get into investments. And I think it has been generally very, very good time for self-development.
Absolutely, I agree with the point. I think education is key, especially when it comes to girls and women in STEAM subjects in particular, and really having the focused engagement and breaking down those barriers. And just to touch on your point, Sandy, about having, I guess, now more of an opportunity to actually, even if it's virtually, attend these sorts of events or being able to speak and actually share your expertise and showcase your expertise, and of course everyone else on the panel as well. And in that respect, I hope long may that element to continue, even when we go into, I guess, some kind of physical environment at some point in the future. But I think, I guess with that in mind, as we kind of reach to the epitome, the climax of our conversation today, is given the audience that we have, obviously from a Women Global point of view, with our stakeholders, partners, and sponsors that are in charge of, but also looking at the wider community and partners and chapters, of course, around the world. I wanted to perhaps end as we started by giving you each the virtual microphone for a couple of minutes, and just really ask you, as a call of action to our captive audience today, how can we, I say we, me being part of the audience in this scenario, how can we actually support all your efforts in both what you're all doing individually through your companies and your initiatives, but also more generally in terms of the adoption of technology in these constructs, or even progressing the gender equity agenda. Of course, very huge concepts there to kind of dial down in a few minutes. But I think if I ask each of you, where would be your call to action for us as the audience? If I start with Shirley, of course.
For gender equality, I think it's more call to action is to women believe that they're not excluded from the whole crypto blockchain industry. It's not a Wild West where it's just men out there. If you have the willingness to do the steep learning curve and also to sacrifice from your family life a bit, maybe, then everybody can succeed in this space. It's a hard work, but it is very it's an interesting industry. It's like every day there is something to learn and a lot to learn, and it's moving at a lightning speed. And the way to learn is velas.com. So we have weekly news, and we have products for different skill sets for developers and as well for beginners. So check out velas.com.
I certainly will be after this call. So let's see, who shall I pick? It's a bit of a spinning wheel, a lottery wheel. Let's go to Sandy.
My last word would go to really, again, technology and technology for good, and technology at the service of society. And I would say to partners, investors, corporate don't look at who is behind the project or behind the initiative, because we know that initiative led by women are getting less funding and less support. And don't look at that. I mean, look at what it's going to make as a difference to society and how technology can change something for the better and serve the larger population. And because, I mean, if it's going to make a difference, why is it different when it is founded by a male founder than a female founder? So, and that also has to change in the way we look at female-led projects versus male-led projects. That's also a change in mindset that is absolutely needed for the future.
Absolutely. I think again, I'm agreeing with all of these, and I feel like a bit of a parrot, so I don't want to just echo what you're saying. So I'll hand the mic on to Liesel and then Madison.
Yeah, I think I'm going to piggyback with what Sandy said, which is, we're actually backing off of Shirley as well. For those who are just now, during this crazy year, learning about crypto and blockchain, it's not too late. The train is still, we're still pretty early on. So if you have questions for people who can give you answers, there's Google, increasing accessibility to all these resources, YouTube, Reddit, right? So learn about, fuel your curiosity. And the other thing is, if you, stay throughout this entire session, and if you have questions on, is it really better? Is this, why can't we just use the old existing system? Just ask yourself this one question, which is it better, faster, and more efficient? Is it possibly better, faster, and more efficient? And the question is it more secure and more easy to use? And if the answer to both of them was most likely yes, then I think that, this is potentially something that you should be encouraging and you should be open to. And let me pass the torch to Madison.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say anything that's not new. So I think, echoing everybody, but also saying, as a call to action for all the women on this call and all the women that might not be on this call, really, it's great to educate yourself. It's great to support and be a cheerleader, but also, put money where your mouth is, right? Donate to Sandy, invest in companies that are doing this stuff, really start putting money in these initiatives, because as much as we can be oh, wow, this is a great mission. Oh, beautiful, great thing that you're doing. It's really going to take a lot of capital to create societal and cultural change. So, put that money up.
Yeah, and also I think something to add to that is a lot of female investors feel like their capital will not make a difference. The amount they can invest is too low, right? But that's not true. Every single contribution helps and supports us. And more than anything, more than the capital, the fact that you, one, put your money where your mouth is, it doesn't matter the amount, but also bring in that strategic value and support. That's more important. So, we're here to welcome you with open arms.
And I think, one just to wrap up, I think one thing that I'll try to kind of tie a nice bow around those statements is that, especially when it comes to gender equity, in that we are talking about gender equity, and not necessarily purely in the binary sense of male and men and women being equitable in the space, but of course non-binary and trans. But for me, I'm thinking sometimes I think one of the issues from, I'm going to use the male perspective here, is that it's women, for women to have an equal place. It's like a problem with women, or it's a women problem. So it requires a solution from women. And for me, I think that's absolutely absurd. To gain true gender equity, the solutions need to come from all angles. We need men to be allies to this, to this cause. So it's not just a matter of, all the women out there, how are you going to solve this problem that we face where there's, gender inequity, right? This really needs to be a holistic thing where really, men, others need to support women and others more generally. And we all need to accept the fact that we live in this biased and slanted system, and the only way we can actually do something about it is to, like I say, put money where your mouth is and actually lead by action. So on that note, slightly controversial maybe, I'd like to end it there. Thank you all for your time. And as always with these panels, one of the things I love is just how insightful they are and diverse they are from across the globe, from across multidisciplinary, multi-experience. I'm in a room of people that are smarter and more experienced than myself. So I always enjoy that. So thank you all for your time, and to the audience, of course, I hope that you all have enjoyed this. Please join us on our platform, womenintech.net, to engage further with the community. And of course, we hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.